Happy post-Labor Day. Hope everyone got to enjoy a nice, long, extended weekend. This is the Rocker Dog Podcast, the show that talks to musical artists about their dogs. I'm your host, Tim Dill. The dog I talk about incessantly is my goodest boy, Charlie, but today's episode is all about the canine companions of our guest, Melissa Carper, the Austin, Texas treasure who's been highly acclaimed by NPR, Rolling Stone, and No Depression. Melissa released a new album back in July titled Born in Ya, and these are her deep-souled rocker dogs.
Okay, my dog is Georgia Peach.
And what is Georgia Peach? I know she's got this beautiful brindle coat with some white in her, but what is she a mix?
Yeah, a mix, and we're not sure. We've never, tested her to see exactly what she is, but we believe she is definitely part Whippet and part Mountain Cur.
And how old is she?
And she's probably around 10. We got her as a rescue when we think she was around 1, but it's all estimated.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I typically start the show by asking the context in which you got your dog and going back, 9 or 10 years, but I think we'd be doing a disservice to Betty Boo if we don't put them all in the context. So let's talk a little bit about Betty Boo as well. So how far does
Great.
Betty Boo go back?
I got Betty, let's see, 2005 or 4, 2004.
Okay. And was that a black lab?
She was a black lab American Bulldog mix.
Okay. Okay.
But she mostly looked like a black lab, but she was just a little more like stocky, like American Bulldog.
And going back 20 years, I know if I was asked this question, I'm not sure I could answer it from 20 years ago, but what was kind of going on in your life? What were the circumstances for getting Betty Boo?
Well, I was living in the country. Actually, I had a little piece of land in southern Missouri, just over the border from Arkansas. And Betty and all her brothers and sisters were born just across from me, really close. And Betty kept coming over and visiting with one of her brothers and sisters. And I already had 2 dogs at the time. These were dogs that I had with a girlfriend, and we both owned them. So I wasn't thinking about taking on another dog. But Betty, one day I found her. I was jogging, and I found her when I came back to my house. She was passed out by my mailbox, and so I carried her to my house. And then from that moment on, I tried to keep taking care of her, but she kept going back home to where all her other brothers and sisters were, and they weren't really being adopted. So it was kind of too many puppies for one family to take care of,
Right.
So eventually, I did keep Betty, and I moved away from there, and that's when she was my dog, because she couldn't go back to her other family anymore. And we officially adopted her from the neighbors. So.
Okay. Were the neighbors breeding the dogs?
It was just something that sort of happened, as it does in the country, and they weren't really very actively trying to find homes for the puppies. And anyway, so they kind of it was good that we were willing to take on one of the puppies. Yeah.
And it sounds like Betty Boo became quite a dog to you.
Betty Boo was a great dog.
And she inspired the song Ain't a Day Goes By. I think you wrote that back in 2014.
Yes.
How soon did you... Go ahead.
You go ahead.
I was going to say, how soon did you write it after her passing? And was it... I can imagine it was a hard song emotionally to write, but maybe it was an easy song that it really just came out.
I probably wrote the first part of it within a few months of her passing. And then I might have finished that song within the next year or so, just finished the verses. But it was always hard for me to sing it. And see, even now I tear up about it, but it probably took me it took me years to be able to sing it and not cry.
Yeah. Well, I understand that. I just had I think the episode I have out now, we got into the loss of a dog and how sometimes the loss is so profound, you question yourself like, gosh, I didn't feel this way when a human I know had passed away. I'm sorry, a human I know.
Oh.
I'm using the terminology of born. Born in you. A human I knowed
All right, I hear you. You're using my terminology. Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. I could not believe how torn up I was because it was completely different and I'd say like much more intense than losing my parents. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I have a quote that you posted on social media. It said, "So much more than a dog, had a deep soul, and was my angel who helped me through some hard times." And I'm wondering, what is it about dogs that give them the capacity to see us through hard times?
well, definitely that they have that unconditional love for you.
Hmm.
They're just always going to be there. And I think that I know Betty, she was especially sensitive and she could tell when I was sad, you know.
Right.
She would come over and she was a very loving dog. So yeah, to me, dogs, their souls are probably more evolved than our human souls.
Hmm.
I think they're very special creatures.
Yes, yes, I agree. You had a quote that was provided to me by our intermediary, and it said, "My partner and I say the nicest things about dog companionship is they don't talk, at least not in
That's
human
right.
words. She speaks volumes with those eyes." And I believe you're talking about Georgia, but I think it's true to all dogs. But that was very
Yeah,
profound to me because I feel like, and this goes back to what you were just speaking of, is the presence of a dog really means a lot. Because I think when you're going through any issue, whether it be a breakup or a loss, just having someone in the room. You don't necessarily need somebody filling your ear with condolence. You just want someone to be there, to listen, to be able to cry on, to show affection to. And I feel like that would be my answer to that question. And I feel like that's kind of where you're getting
absolutely.
at as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, you expressed that better than I did. But yeah, all those things. And I do feel like both Betty and Georgia they've been definitely telepathic where they know what I'm about to do. Oh,
Yeah.
they know what's happening before you even are doing it. I really feel like they can read our thoughts and our definitely our feelings. They're reading our feelings and they're reading our thoughts all the time. So that's to
Yeah.
me is the sign of a pretty advanced soul that's doing those things.
Yeah. So with this loss of Betty Boo, you mentioned you never thought you'd have a dog again because you know obviously didn't want to go through the pain of losing another one, but realized you wanted another dog in life. So when did you know the time was right, and how did you go about seeking out another dog?
I think it was about a year and a half or so after Betty had died, and that I just couldn't stop thinking about. I would see puppies or dogs, and I would just be craving that sort of a relationship again. And I visited the Humane Society a couple times, thinking, okay, if the right one presents itself. But then I didn't have feel like I felt a strong bond with any of the dogs that I like you go visit and take
Yeah.
one for a walk or something. So I was just sort of kind of waiting till it felt right. But and I think what happens as a dog owner too is you just get used to walking them and
Hmm.
caring for them. And it was weird when I didn't have a dog to walk, like just that
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
So I guess I knew I was ready again, about a year and a half. So we got invited over to a friend's house and they had Georgia Peach, but they had rescued her from she just come up on their land. They had like 5 acres in the country. So she had come up on their land and they were keeping her, but they already had 2 dogs. So
Hmm.
they actually had 3 dogs already when Georgia came, and another of their dogs was a rescue dog as well. So they were thinking they were going to take Georgia and this other dog to a no-kill humane shelter in Colorado because I guess they said dogs got adopted super fast out of Colorado for whatever reason. And they were about to do that like in a week. But when I met Georgia, she leaped into my arms like she knew me. So I, anyway, I was like, well, why don't you let us take her just for a week and we'll see how that goes. And of course, that was the end of that. I mean,
Yeah.
we got attached to her immediately. So
That's great. That was just what I
yeah,
was looking for. I had the note and I was ready for that comment of her jumping in your arms, which is so
yeah.
precious. Now, from what I could tell, is you've always taken your dogs on tour. I won't say every tour, but it's common that you take them on the road. Has that been difficult, or is that maybe difficult but worth the trouble?
Yeah, I think it's definitely always challenging, but it's worth the trouble to do it some of the time, I'd say. I don't think it's fair on the dog to do it too much because it's not a great life for them to
Hmm.
be on the road, and if you don't have enough time to, if they're just getting little walks a few times a day and they're in the car all day, and there's not a nice break for them to enjoy some time outside the car and stuff, then I think then it's not the nicest thing to do to the dog. But with Georgia, whenever Rebecca, Rebecca and I both own Georgia together, so when she's on tour with me and she plays fiddle with me quite a bit, between the two of us, we can usually give her enough walks and take care of her well enough that we'll take her on a short tour, like a week or a week and a half.
Yeah.
And that's kind of nice to be able to do. Like she's on tour right now with me, but I have Rebecca with me, and we have like 2 days off right now in Wisconsin where we can walk her quite a bit, and she's not in the car all day. So it's kind of I just choose the right short little tours that I can bring her on, and
Okay.
it's and she enjoys it. Like she loves seeing other places, and she loves people, and so I think she kind of enjoys going on the road a little bit with us. She's a good road dog. Like you won't even notice she's in the car. Sometimes she's just like chill in the back seat. So
Yeah. So any misadventures with Georgia or Betty Boo on the road?
I'm trying to think. Well, the same day I played the Opry last year, we were staying at a friend's house, and while we were gone, Georgia was in the backyard running around with the other dog. They had a doggy door, and she injured her knee,
Oh no.
which I mean that could happen anywhere at any
Yeah.
time, but that did happen. That happened on the road, and then we had to get a surgery for her knee, but she's all good now. The surgery healed the problem, and so she can run and do everything that she was doing before. But it's hard when something like that happens on the road, of course. But I'm trying to think back with Betty did get to the point where she didn't really love traveling anymore, and she got some kind of road anxiety where she would start panting quite a bit. So that
Uh,
was when she was a little older, and then I realized, okay, it's not good to take her on the road anymore because this is giving her anxiety. But before she had the anxiety, she was just like Georgia. Like she would just be in the back seat, and you wouldn't even know she was there. She really enjoyed traveling. So I'm not quite sure what gave her the anxiety, but I had to stop traveling with her at that point.
yeah. Well, I wanted to ask, you had a recent post about the food you gave Georgia, and that was you made a stew of like sweet potatoes and cauliflower and broccoli and had
Yeah.
organic grass-fed beef, liver and hearts. And I was curious, do you package that up to bring on the road, or does road mean more off-the-shelf options?
Well, yeah, obviously it's kind of hard to bring that on the road. I started making her homemade food again, I don't know, maybe a year ago when I found a vet that was encouraging me to do that in Austin. Is like a integrative vet where they have the conventional medicine and then alternative as well. And there's a vitamin mix I use called Just Food for Dogs. You've heard of that?
I saw it.
Um,
I saw it on
yeah,
your
so
your reel.
anyway, it makes me feel like better about making homemade food because I feel like I know she's getting all the nutrients she needs as long as I use the recipe and
Yeah.
that mix in there. So, but yeah, when we go on the road, we bring some kind of high-end kibble and then also some freeze-dried raw that we mix in because
Okay.
that's easy to keep on the road. And this vet that I started going to, he said that's kind of like the next best thing you can do if you're not making them homemade food.
Yeah, well, Georgia's a lucky dog. You seem to really
Yeah,
take
well,
care of her well and go
I
go that extra mile.
I feel like I take care of Georgia better than I did Betty. She's like the second child that has it better than the first one.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say, who eats better, your dog or you?
Sometimes it's probably Georgia.
That's what I thought. Well, I conclude every show with what I call the Zoomies, and that's just five frivolous, fast questions. So let's go there. And the first
Okay.
question is, do you kiss your dogs, I'll say dogs, on the mouth?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, you should. I repeat
That
myself often, but that is the correct answer to that question.
is the correct answer. All right, I'm not gonna feel ashamed of it.
You shouldn't. Question two is, does any of your dogs, did they ever have a theme song?
I wrote a song for Betty called Betty Boo, and so I guess that would be her theme song. I recorded it one time, just a kind of a not such a great recording, but I recorded it, and I should re-record it sometime because it's a decent little song, I think. But yeah, Betty Boo, is would have to be her theme song. And then I guess for Georgia, I tried to write a song for Georgia too, but I guess your furniture is too nice for me and my doggy. That the song on my new album could be her theme song,
Okay.
and also if I make a Georgia post, a lot of times I put Ray Charles singing Georgia on my mind on the post.
Okay, that makes sense. Perfect sense. Question three, I know your dogs have gone on tour with you. Just hypothetically, what would you add to your tour rider to take care of them? Or what would they want on the
Ooh,
tour rider?
this is a good question. I should be including my dogs on the rider. Why haven't I thought of that? Well, they definitely need green room access, and I suppose some homemade dog food as well. Home cooked dog food, the way I make it. I could send them the recipe ahead of time.
Now, you raised a point about the green room. If your partner plays with you often, who watches the dog? Does the dog just get put in the green room? Or do you have a road
Sometimes
manager or somebody just to keep an eye on?
Sometimes they've been fine. The green rooms have been fine letting her in, and but a lot of times we'll get a hotel that a pet room, and put her in there in a crate while we're playing. If the temperature's nice for her to be in the car, she loves just being in the car. But of
Yeah,
course, half the year it's not going to be a good temperature to have them in
yeah.
the car. So, but yeah, the green room has been a nice place for her to be. If it's like a laid back sort of gig, like if we play my friend's barn concert or something, then she'll just be right there on stage with us too. She likes that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We got
Yeah.
to see video of that. You got to find video and put that up, unless I missed it.
Yeah, I need to do that. I need to remember to video these moments for her.
So question four is, do you have a dog voice? Do you speak to your dogs in that high-pitched baby voice or anything unique?
Oh, for sure. But I'm not going to do it right here.
Okay. The second part to that question is, do you give your dogs a voice? Do you ever kind of imagine what they would sound like personified?
Yeah, I think that the voice that I talk in to Georgia is the same voice I use for the thoughts that are in her head.
Okay.
Actually, I think they're the same voice, but that's funny you ask about that because we have this woman that comes to our Oklahoma gigs. She lives in Oklahoma City, and we just saw her in Oklahoma City, and she uses an app called My Talking Pet. Have you ever seen that
No, but I'll
app?
look it up.
So she'll take a picture of Georgia, and then she'll use the talking pet app for Georgia to speak, and it's her voice, her doggy voice as Georgia. It's pretty cute.
That sounds right up my alley.
It's pretty
And
fun.
question five is there a dog organization or service that you'd like to take a moment just to give a shout out to? It could be anything. It could be a shelter, a vet, a walker, a dietitian.
Yeah, well, I love the singer Doris Day. She's got an amazing voice. Back when I was getting into jazz and all the jazz standards, I discovered how much I loved her. And she's such a great jazz singer too. I think a lot of people don't realize that. Anyway, at one point in time, I know I was looking her up, Doris Day, seeing if she was still alive, what she was doing, and she has an animal rescue and has had that for I think since the 70s. And I know she died in like 2019, but her animal rescue turned into like a foundation called the Doris Day Animal Foundation.
Oh,
And I
great.
know they've done a whole lot for homeless animals and finding animals home. Also, like a big movement to try to get more animals spayed and neutered so there were less homeless animals. So
Yep.
I know her foundation is continues to go on even though she passed away in 2019. But yeah, she did a whole lot for animals. So I would shout out Doris Day.
All right, let's shout out Doris Day. Good to know, and I love taking all this information. I'll put it in the show notes so our audience can see and learn more about the And I'll learn more about the foundation. So thanks for tipping us off.
Absolutely.
Now, by the time this airs, your new album, Born Dinya, as I was trying to say earlier, Born Dinya, will already be out. And I just want to ask, I want to bring this back to the dogs. What is Born Din, both Georgia and Betty Boo?
I'm glad you asked that because this brings up another subject that we haven't touched on yet. And when Betty died, I had a lot of my more spiritual friends say, "Oh, they come back to you." And I was like, "What do you mean they come back to you?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, their souls, they can just come back in another dog and they'll find you, because they have short lives. The same animal soul can come back to you."
Right.
Maybe even three or four times in your own life. And I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. I love that concept. And so I've just started believing in that idea because I like the idea of it, that they can keep coming back to you. So I don't know if I answered your question that well. That was a little bit of a tangent, but I do feel like what is born in an animal, I feel like Betty was almost an angel. Her soul was like an angelic soul.
And what about Georgia? You feel the same, or kind of what's the difference?
Yeah, I think that Georgia has quite a different personality. She's a little more playful than Betty, a little less serious. Betty was more serious. But I actually I almost wonder if Georgia doesn't have Betty's soul, because that animal psychic I talked to about it said that they'll still have different personalities if they do that. They won't have the same personality as your old dog.
Yeah.
Even if the soul enters into the new dog. But anyway, I don't know. I think they're magical creatures, and now I'm convinced that I always have to have a dog at this point. I have to give it a little break in between, but I do feel like they're my companions. Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're great. I started a podcast just about them, so I'm committed.
I know I can tell you feel the same.
Yeah. Well, Melissa, thank you for giving me the stories behind Georgia and Betty Boo. It was really a treat for me to hear, the backgrounds after learning about you and going to your social media and seeing the posts you have and getting an idea, but it's so much better to hear the story straight from you and get a little bit deeper. So I appreciate your time and everything you do for your dogs. You're a good owner.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much for having me on. This has been really fun, and love talking to a dog person. We get each other.
Yes. And good luck with the new album, and we'll be looking for you on the road.
Thank you.